thanks very much to Joe for giving us the theory. Now we're going to have the practical session where we say how to take all of these capabilities and potentials and turn them into, well, we used to say that you had to be innovative in the tech industry, but nowadays that's not enough. You have to be disruptive. And so the five of us are going to talk about how we're being disruptive, and hopefully that will give you some pointers as to the way that you can spot those disruptive opportunities in the industries where you want to make a mark. Joe's graph towards the end of his presentation, in which he showed that the time to market, the cost of realizing the market, and the profitability of being the first mover, the first to disrupt, was a really key chart, I think, in terms of illustrating what the opportunities are. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Phil Wainwright, and as Rihanna said, I have been for, I think, 8 years a blogger on ZDNet, writing about SaaS and cloud. As of this week, I have a new gig. I am a co-founder of a disruptive tech media site called Diginomica. I invite you to go to the diginomica.com website, see what we're doing there. We believe the tech media model that's established today is broken, that the chase for banner advertising and page views means that content that is available on the web about technology and enterprise adoption of technology is not relevant, and therefore we've launched a new site intending to break that mold and to give the readers and the vendors, and indeed the writers, much more what they're looking for in terms of information about what's going on and valuable dialogue between the customers, the buyers, and the vendors. So that's my contribution to disruption. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to just say a couple of sentences about their business and what they believe is particularly disruptive about it, and then we'll get into the discussion. So I'm first of all delighted to introduce Tony Nemelka on my left, who is from Badgeville. Tony, tell me what you're doing at Badgeville.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for inviting me here today. So I run corporate and business development at Badgeville. We provide a development platform and related services to help companies gamify their business processes, their applications, their websites. So, gamification, one of those buzzwords. I like to break it down like this. We basically have an ability to track what people do and create a system of record for what people do in an application and across multiple applications. But it doesn't stop there. It's a system of record for what people do, but it's also a system of record for what you want people to do. And what gamification does is it comes in and, using behavioral science and all of the great techniques that game designers use, bridge the gap between what people do and what you want them to do. And a new and emerging space, but that's really kind of the key insight that got us moving in the first place.
Right, so it's more than just gamification, but obviously the whole notion of using gameplay to motivate people to achieve enterprise goals certainly sounds pretty disruptive to me.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting business, and most of our customers, interestingly, are very large enterprises, particularly large ISVs, who are embedding this type of approach into their user design and user experience for their applications.
Great, thanks, Tony. So next along is Eric Monderer. Now he is replacing Christopher Dean, who was scheduled in the program to speak, but he is still from Urban Airship. Eric is VP of Business Development there. Urban Airship sounds like it's trying to disrupt something, that company name. So tell us what Urban Airship actually does.
It certainly is a catching name that people remember, that's for sure. So that's disruptive in many ways. So we don't have cloud in our name, but Airship is close to that. But what we do, I run business development for Urban Airship, and we are really disrupting several different markets that are driving advantages for brands. What we do is deliver the ability to deliver at scale worldwide across multiple operating systems, phones or tablets, the ability to deliver a push message or ability to gain presence within Apple Passbook market spaces. And one of the big disruptive things that we do, and a big challenge for brands, is that on average, people are spending over 2 to 3 hours a day inside mobile applications on devices. And it will eclipse the time spent watching TV this year. And from a brand perspective, whether it's Walmart, ESPN, a corporate B2B brand like Oracle, Starbucks, all of our customers, they want to connect to consumers wherever they live, work, or play. And having the brand in their hand is critical and important. It's, you know, what people say is the kind of most valuable real estate, you know, in the world today is that icon, is that brand, your application on the phone. And the challenge is, how do we deliver a message? How do we communicate and build a relationship with that consumer?
And obviously mobile itself is a very disruptive environment anyway, but you're adding an additional layer of innovation on top of that.
Yeah, the big challenge is that you know, it's great and good to build an app, but as many of you know, to discover one and have a user download one is a challenge. But once you get there, the statistic is that people download about 120 applications to the device, but the shelf life for an app is about a month. So people are deleting it, they're not engaged in any way, shape, and form. And just like any brand message, if you're spending that much time on phones inside applications, you want to be able to be relevant and send a very relevant, contextually aware, location aware message. This is the newest marketing communication channel, and it provides, you know, the ability of analyzing and getting analytics and delivering very specific, relevant messages that's been really unheard of to date. You know, different than email, different than text messaging, different than display ads. So it's opening up and unearthing a huge kind of disruptive opportunity for marketers.
So our next disruptor is Tom Gonser, who's founder and chief strategy officer of DocuSign, disrupting the market for paper and quill pens.
Yeah, getting rid of the way people have been doing business for 4,000 years, actually.
That's pretty disruptive.
If you think about it, I mean, if you want to reach an agreement, you know, you're getting out a pen and writing your name on a piece of paper and mailing it to somebody. We decided that was a little old. So we've actually enabled businesses to do entire transactions without paper. So it started with the signature, but the platform enables not just signing, but authenticating the people in the transaction, managing the data that's in the transaction, assembling the documents in the right order, routing them, et cetera. So our customers are literally taking a process that maybe takes, you know, a week, has a lot of errors in terms of rekeying, a lot of expense in terms of labor, and completely automating that in a way that is much more secure, and actually from a legal perspective, much more legally defensible.
Right, and that's important actually, because you're not just disrupting the old method, but you're actually adding value in the new method.
Yeah. If you think about it, what we're doing is very similar to what Visa did. Before Visa, if you wanted to move money in checks, you physically had to move money in checks. They built a network that caters to both consumers and users, but that brand, and merchants and banks. And now almost all transactions, monetary transactions, are done electronically. We're doing the same thing with the rest of the business transaction.
Yes, I'm old enough to remember when you actually had to go to the post office and have, in the UK, and have something put into your passport if you changed foreign currency. And the ability to just now take money out of a hole in the wall or waive a credit card is completely different. So there's a lot of disruption in the world today, clearly. So our final guest speaker is Dave Yarnold, who is CEO of ServiceMax. Tell us about the disruption that you're doing with ServiceMax.
Well, we are, again, CEO of ServiceMax. We are enthusiastically disrupting the age-old industry of field service. I'm not sure if it's 4,000 years old, but it's pretty darn close. It's the industry of folks that go out and fix things. And it is a massive market that has been quite neglected by the enterprise software world, and we have a suite of mobile and cloud apps that are delivering incredible results to our customers globally.
Right, okay. And enabling those businesses actually to have disruptive change in the way that they're delivering service to their customers, I guess.
Yeah, our tagline is enabling flawless field service, which folks tend to think of service as a place where you do the least amount for the least cost. What we're finding is that by delivering great tools to the service guys out in the field, they're your strongest brand components, and they actually, it gives them the ability to generate additional revenues. Our early results of our early customers are showing that our average customer increases revenues by 14%, which is a staggering amount when you talk about the billions of dollars, billions of service dollars that are being generated by these organizations. 31% increase in productivity. Again, just by having a tool which they've never had. When you think about your typical interaction with a field service person in the past, it's somebody with some tools and a clipboard and, okay, tell me what's the issue. No history, no tools other than that. So it's a highly impacted business.
Right, so I'm sure everyone in this room knows the kind of Clayton Christian theory about disruptive innovation and how there's two types of innovation. There's enhancement innovation, where you just kind of make the stuff that already happens happen better. And then there's disruptive innovation, where you do stuff differently. You find an underserved market, and I think that probably is true for all of the business that we've described on the platform here. In our different ways, we've found a market that is poorly served by the way things are done at the moment. We're taking advantage of technology that opens up a different way to serve them better and disrupt the old ways of doing things with this new value-added way of doing things. So, you know, that's the theory, but is the rubric for today's session accurate, that actually there's many more opportunities for disruption today in the environment today with the technology that's out there than there ever have been before? I mean, are we in a particularly disruptive decade?
Yeah, I would say that change provides the window of opportunity for disruption. And so if you ask yourself, you know, are things changing faster today, more dynamically than ever before? Yes. And therefore, yes, disruption opportunities are more plentiful now than any other time, I think, in human history. And it's an exciting time because of that.
Right.
I would say in our market, demographics and the desire for top-line growth combined are generating this amazing opportunity for growth. You've got, again, millions of these field techs, many of whom have been doing this job for 25, 30 years. You've got companies and CEOs who are making their numbers on service revenues, and they want to grow that group. They've got to bring new people into their workforce, and in order to bring new folks into an industry that's dominated by these veterans, they've got to give them the tools that they're used to using, the type of experience that they're looking for, a mobile, a social-enabled experience, and that is creating the catalyst for change, at least in this industry, and tremendous growth and change.
Yeah, I think the change and this kind of disruption we see in the market is, I think we'll see, 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, like that we're attached, in a chair to a wall with a screen, that we'll laugh at that, a couple years ago, because everyone will have a device in their hand as the way in which they communicate and connect to any of these companies here and your companies. And so the disruption and what we're taking advantage of, either from, your companies who want to connect to your customers, or, large brands who are connecting also to their consumers, is how to take advantage of that and how to communicate. And I think the big disruption we see is from interruption to invitation. This broadcast, media, where you could just broadcast your message, 100 times and bury it in my brain and I will buy something, to the power is in the consumer's hands on their mobile device, and how they interact, how they connect, how they consume information, the research that they do, and the way in which you actually build a relationship, which is all of what Urban Airship does. We power about 70,000 applications to do that. That's kind of what we see as the big disruptor, and how marketers who are spending a ton of money are trying to figure out how to take advantage of that today.
So Tom, you were disrupting before mobile and social came along. I mean, does that raise the stakes, and you have to be a disruptive again to embrace those technologies?
Well, I think if something is truly disruptive, it's truly a new thing. The next wave of technology doesn't run over it; it actually propels it forward. Mm-hmm. So in our case, for example, the underlying hypothesis I have in terms of why there is so much disruption is that at some point in the last 10 years, we all got on the same wire.
Yep.
Literally, we are all on the same wire. We are 200
Right.
milliseconds away from everybody on the planet.
Yep.
That's why there's Facebook.
Fundamental, isn't it?
That's
Yeah.
why all of these things can happen. And the wave of disruption is because we're starting to realize that you can take advantage of that. I came in on BART this morning. Every single person on the train was looking at their mobile device.
Yeah.
They were completely connected to something. I don't know what it was, but boy, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, those people were all completely disconnected. And that's just enabled an amazing change. For us, mobile, I mean, mobile is fast. So if I need you to sign a document, you can do it on your mobile phone. In a matter of 33% of our transactions are actually signed on a mobile device now. And that's growing at, a pace that'll say,
33%, I've heard.
Yep.
That's
So-
incredible. I mean, obviously, I guess that includes iPads, but it's still
it includes iPads,
pretty
yeah,
remarkable.
all mobile devices. So
Yeah.
2 years ago, it was near zero. And we're talking about quite a few. We add 70,000 new identities to network a day right now. So 33% of those are mobile, and probably in the next year, it'll be more like 70%.
Yeah. So you've got to keep pace with the change that's going on, haven't you? We're going to make this as interactive as possible. So if anyone has got any questions or comments that they want to bring in from the floor, then please do that. I'm not going to quarantine you to 5 minutes at the end of the session if you have something that you want to say now. We do have a hard stop because one of us has to go on a call at 10:30, so it's going to be a pretty punchy session. If you do have a comment or question, please keep it short. What about this kind of distinction between innovation and disruption? I mean, can you still be successful by just being innovative, or do you need to be disruptive? I mean, why are we saying go beyond and be disruptive? What's the attraction?
Well, one way to think about disruption is to focus on sustainable competitive advantages, right? Innovation is pretty easy to copy. Disruption is much more difficult to copy. And I've worked for many startups and many large companies, and they all have the same dilemma, which is, so how do you disrupt something in the long term while focusing in on customer value in the short term, right? I don't think Google, when they were founded, were thinking about disrupting the advertising business. And I know because I was at IBM, the Microsoft wasn't thinking about taking over the world of computing. So you got to first focus in on customer value, creating customers, building momentum, sustaining that momentum through fundraising, and then continuing to grow the business. And frankly, that's what Badgeville has done very effectively, while trying to think about the big picture.
Okay.
And I think clearly the opportunity is much bigger if you can create a disruptive new technology. You create an entire market. It's much more expensive to do that. It takes longer. But there's a big difference between doing that and creating the next CRM, an incremental improvement over something that already exists. Still, fantastic opportunity in that, but creating an entire industry and an entire market that sort of moves the technology curve.
Well, I think there are different levels as well, because Salesforce was not disruptive in terms of delivering CRM, because Siebel had already done that. Siebel was the disruptor. What Salesforce did was they delivered it from the cloud.
Correct.
And that was the disruptive thing. And I think part of the secret here is, I mean, can I just ask for a show of hands, who here in the audience, well, and speakers as well, believes that they're in a business that is being disruptive? How many disruptors do we have in the room? We have a lot of disruptors, don't we? Okay, which is great. So how do you actually identify that you've got a disruption that counts, that you've got a disruption which is going to have the impact?
Revenue.
Revenue.
I mean, so at the end of the day, I mean, look, we are. Look at the panel here. This is great to see. We're all, companies that went to market, started a market, focused on a hard problem, solved a hard problem elegantly, but focused on revenue and customers in an enterprise world.
Enterprise is back.
Enterprise is back, and there are a lot of companies who have done that, and the valuations for succeeding in that is great. But I think our focus was we we looked at an opportunity, and kind of the story behind Urban Airship was one of our co-founders was actually developing a game, mobile game, at the time that Apple iOS 3, now this is 4 years ago, was about to introduce kind of this transport that would allow you to send a message to the iPhone device, and found it terribly hard because they wanted to send like an in-app message. You know, your game is, you know, buy more virtual currency. You know, community. Someone's added the community. Someone, you know, rock your ships or whatever it was, and found it terribly hard and terribly difficult to build that type of thing from scratch. And that was really the birth, you know, of Urban Airship. And we got, you know, our first customer the day that Apple launched their platform. You know, a revenue-based customer, and you know, the things that we focus was like continue to disrupt, continue to quickly develop and fail, what we kind of internally fail fast, quickly discover what we can do and get it in front of customer, kind of a minimum viable product, fail fast, fail quickly, move on. That's where you're going to learn. Talk is cheap. You know, get in front of customers, get some revenue. We've been very successful, as I know all the panelists have as well.
Phil, my customers support a whole range of products, but you know, it could be medical device technologies that are life-saving technologies that need to be up and running all the time, and taking care of their customers. I like to call my customers, they're belt and suspenders guys. So when I think back 3 years ago, and I was talking about iPads, and I was talking about utilizing social technologies that would enable their field techs to connect with anybody in the organization to provide an answer, to fix a problem right on time, quickly, and faster than they could ever have imagined in the past, they all said, whoa, you know, NFW, right? Today, they can't get enough of it. They just can't wait to put iPads in the hands of their field techs. It has changed dramatically in the last 2 years, and it's been wonderful to watch because again, it generates revenue, you know, paying customers obviously for us, which is pretty exciting for me.
Well, I think you touched on an important point there, because I think timing is also key in being disruptive, isn't it? Because you know the Newton did not work for Apple. It was too early. The iPad has worked. So actually coming to market with the right proposition when the technology is ready to make that the right proposition, and when the cultural readiness of the marketplace is there. So you know, you can be disruptive with a great idea, but at the wrong time sometimes, can't you?
Or the wrong delivery vehicle. Yeah.
And
You got to guess. I mean, we started developing our iPad app a month after it came out, and all of our customers were saying those are fragile, they're consumer devices, there's no way. But you know, it just looked like such a compelling device for the market. We took a chance, and it took a while. It took a while to get the technology right. It took a while for our customers to say, yeah, I can see doing that. You've got to take a chance. You've got to jump in the deep end of the pool sometimes and hope you can make it to the side. And you know, obviously we've had that experience. But I recall the discussions at with my team where they're looking at me, are you sure? The iPad, really?
No, it was definitely a rogue thought.
Yeah.
I mean, the first mobile product we built was not, we didn't really want to build it. That kind of made us do it. But if you look at the growth of the network, it took us probably 6 years to get the first 1 million identities in the system. Mm-hmm. It took us 9 months to get 1.5 million users on a mobile device. So it's an order of magnitude faster.
Right. But I mean, I think as more and more people use these technologies or these business methods, then you know, it spreads more quickly, doesn't it? It becomes more acceptable. We're herding. We instinctively herd. So if we see other people doing things, I think that's one of the other challenges. I wanted to talk about, you know, the challenges of being disruptive. I mean, one of them is that if you're going to be disruptive, you've got to go against the herd, haven't you? You've got to go out there and do something that people are not doing at the moment, or perhaps even more difficult, get people to do something that they're not doing at the moment, which you believe is a better way to do things. And that is tough, isn't it? I mean,
well,
one of the strategies
you're
for
talking about a
making that
behavior
successful.
change in some cases. That's very hard to do that. When I started the company, this is my third company, I told my wife one morning I'm going to go and start another company, and she was, oh my gosh, we're going to lose all our money again, right? And so she said, make sure you talk to Mike, our attorney, and make sure this is something that's going to be legal, because this is kind of crazy. You're going to sign documents on the internet. Come on. So I had Mike do his review, and he came back with this big book in all 50 states and said, technically it might be legal, but there's no way this is going to work because there's too many hurdles. It's too new an idea. So when I came back, and my wife said, so what did he say? He said, it's all go.
But I think your point about the herd mentality, you've got to be aware of it, and you've got to start the herd moving. You got to do it with conviction. You got to do it over and over and over. You got to connect the dots in your market and get those early adopters moving and leading the herd for you. Yeah. Otherwise, it's a great idea, and nobody's willing to take that chance.
Right.
Yeah, we went through the same thing. I mean, in early days, people thought it was crazy. Who would want to send a message, to a user on an app? That's crazy. No one would like that. In fact, we were kind of 0 for 30 in a fundraising in our early days with VCs, and people just thought it was just absolutely nonsense. Even though mobile was quite big, that this would be actually a new opportunity for marketers to connect, and we've proven, the results. 400%, increase in app engagement, and 200% increase in app retention, as a result of delivering a push. But I think the kind of sticking the neck out for us was around how we message that, because it could be perceived as a, spam channel, as a, people would communicate too frequently or in bad taste, et cetera. So we do a lot of things as the industry to talk about. We have a kind of a good push guide around best practices and best principles around when to send a message, how to send a message, what's the proper use of this brand new, kind of next billion-dollar channel. So I think that's the a lot of the things that we were concerned about in the early days.
Yeah, and I think you've got to give guidelines, haven't you, for your early adopters to help them, and also help them kind of help each other, but build a community around it as well. Because one of the things that we find with Diginomica, explaining the concept to people, especially if you're going to CMOs who are very metrics focused, and you're saying, okay, we're not going to build traffic, we're actually going to build quality content, and we're going to do that by developing a kind of social chatter around the articles and the content that we're delivering. And you need to deliver content that is going to be intriguing and insightful for people. We don't want marketing stuff. And there's some people who get that, but there's many people who it's not worth talking to at the moment until you've actually been able to demonstrate the model a little bit better. And then you need to help the partners that you are working with to actually make a success of it. And effectively hold their hands, don't you?
Yeah, and in the early days, I think, for all companies, it's not so much convincing people that they need what you have. It's finding the ones who are already convinced and looking for it.
Right.
Right.
I mean, you must particularly have this because gamification is a concept that has got all kinds of baggage that people bring to it immediately, that you have to almost strip away to actually get your point across, I guess.
It does, and often I'll kind of describe the beginnings of the company. I was COO at Social Text. Chris Duggan, our founder, was the head of sales, and for 5 years have been trying to sell social collaboration to enterprise. And the most well-attended session at all of those social collaboration events is how do you calculate ROI? And Chris Duggan woke up one day and said, well, if only you could track what people do and then incentivize them to do the things you want them to do, there's your ROI. And after a few conversations, he said, maybe I'm going to go start a company. Now, it just so happened it coincided with this thing called gamification, but it really was a deep understanding of a specific need and some insights into how to address that need and finding the people who feel the same pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So we've got about 5 minutes left, so if you do have a question that you want to put, then it's now or never, basically. So the lights are a little bit bright, but I can see that there is a hand up there. So let's have your question. Thanks.
So started life as a hardware guy. So, one of the major axioms was Moore's Law and the compute power, multiplying, and it seems like people are technically being able to solve that moving forward for the next 10 years or so. But I think more interesting is kind of the intersection between software and analytics, and the ability for, hardware I think is generally solved in terms of compute power. Some people might argue. But do you feel the potential between the intersection of software, because you can innovate and also disrupt much more quickly, that it's going to be a larger disruptor than solving the processing power problem?
Yeah, I think you bring up a really great point, which we, I'm glad you talked about kind of analytics, because I think in our world, that is a very, very powerful tool and level of sophistication that we can deliver to brands. Specifically, if you're Macy's, you don't want to send out a message that says 50% off dresses to everybody in this room. You want to send some message that says 20% off shoes, some that say it's raining in Seattle, here's an umbrella, and here's distance to the store, and for some people it's blouses. So using analytics and information and insights and make them actionable based on users' preferences, based upon what they're doing within the application, where they are, location aware, and being able to deliver very relevant, specific alerts and messages that are meaningful to individuals is driving this kind of return on investment and commerce. And we're gathering, on behalf of like 70,000 applications, as I mentioned, probably about a terabyte of data a day, which is mind-boggling, and being able to mine that and actually deliver very relevant information in terms of messages that are meaningful to consumers. So they're engaging now in the brand. So we're a very powerful proponent of analytics and kind of software in that combination.
Yeah, I think if you look at the underpinnings of this advancement, the software industry's advancement pace dramatically went up when mobile apps came out. All of a sudden, you're seeing apps written in a much shorter period of time. They're very specific in terms of what they do. It's not a weather app; it's weather for skiing in Colorado, right? Mm-hmm. And built into it is an almost perfect distribution mechanism. If you write a good app and put it in an app store, it's globally available immediately. If you get ranked, you will have thousands and thousands of customers very quickly. That was not possible. Was not possible 10 or 15 years ago. And I don't think you could look forward back then and say that would have happened. So I think that's contributed to a huge increase in pace in software.
And also a huge increase in, because most of those apps fail, but it's almost throwaway development. Absolutely. And throwaway innovation, so that enables more opportunity for people to try out ideas and find the ones that work. I know, Dave, you were going to come in on that.
Yeah, I would say one of the things that makes me really excited about this business is the impact on top line revenues for our customers and the use of data. I'll give you one example where it yields appreciable impact on revenue. Is we have several customers. They know that certain techs, when they go out in the field, are good at upselling. They also know that when they have certain products, certain types of issues, that the opportunity is there to upsell the customer. So to take that data from all the thousands and thousands of work orders that are going on and then feed it into your dispatch engine, so that what they're doing is they're sending the tech who's most likely to be able to upsell a product or upgrade the product to the ripest opportunities, even though they're still fulfilling their main function, which is fixing the product. It's yielding tons of additional revenue for that customer, and it's all based on having the data and then being able to manipulate it into something actionable. So that's just one example of where we're seeing the use of data yielding something really exciting for our customer.
And this again is something that has really become more possible since you got started. So I guess you're able to do more and more of that kind of analysis as you grow your data and as the capabilities for analysis become stronger.
Yeah, the data and the tools and the mobile apps that just become easier and easier for the end user to actually complete the action that we want them to complete.
Well, I hope that's given you some pointers as to how disruption works, how you can apply the lessons of disruption and the experiences of our panelists to what you're doing in your business, and I'm sure that will be around in the break if you want to continue the conversation one-on-one. But right now, I'd just like to say a big thank you to our panelists, to Tony Mielke from Badgeville, Eric Monderer from Urban Airship, Tom Gonser from DocuSign, and Dave Arnold from ServiceMax. And my name is Phil Wainwright. Thank you all very much for joining us for today's session.